Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is going to be a wonderful, wonderful day. Welcome, Helen, Ruto, Gloria, Chebet, welcome. We are going to get it right. How to start a HR department, the practice that we love so much because we believe that human beings are the most important assets. But without those structures, without those policies, without Jay, the CV king, welcome, 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 welcome. We are going to enjoy this 1 hour. I can see the moderator of choice. But before we allow the moderator of choice to give her experience on how to start a human resource practice in the organization from scratch, let us talk about the people who have made this possible. Remember, Atala Solutions is a human resource consultancy. It's also an outsourcing firm. If you want your human resource policies and departments to run like clockwork, Atala Solutions is the place to contact. Here are other sponsors of this particular program tonight. We have Pathway Solutions Services. They are online learning management program. They do learning programs online. Vanessa Training Institute, they deal with making very good beds, very good sofa sets, generally furniture, and also they train. We also have We Clean. They clean your chairs, they clean the good stuff that you have in the house, and they do it very fast with modern machines. Then we have Caplamentito. I am an addict of cashew nuts, korosho. I have tested them. If you are in Mombasa, please order some. They can be brought to Nairobi as well. Even in Malaba, they can be brought. We also have Steadfast Quality Solutions. We have Profiles International. If you want to do your emotional intelligence, you want to do your personality test, these are the people you should be able to visit. We have El Semea for those people who love adventures. Please visit. They are so polished and refined. Welcome, Dorothy Chepkoech. We are talking about the people who have sponsored this particular program tonight. We have Star Discover Insurance. We have I'm trying to enlarge my screen. Yes, we have Essen Park. It's also a resource center that you could want to visit. You can go to their website and discover what they do. We have our Banange, that is Nile front. Very, very beautiful. You haven't eaten very good meals. I can, let me not start a war between Kenya and Uganda on how to cook. Please, when you're in Uganda, please visit Nile front. The source of River Nile, my brothers and sisters. Then we have Planet Earth. They deal with outsourcing of human resource. Then we have Liaison. Somebody should tell me how to pronounce. Is it Liaison? Liaison? Thank you very much. And tonight we have our moderator of choice. Today you are at the other side of the shoes. Grace, who is a good friend. She is a human resource consultant. She is a trainer. Most people don't know that she's a communication expert before she shifted into human resource. She's also one of the best MCs and moderators we have around East and Central Africa. But tonight, she's going to talk about how do you start a human resource department from scratch. Over to you. But before I give it to moderator of choice, we have Catherine Chidandi, our sign language interpreter. We believe in getting it right in diversity and inclusion. Moderator of choice, Grace Nzula, how do we start a human resource department from scratch? Over to you.
All right. Richard, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent. It is amazing to see you guys tonight. I'm honored to be on this other side. I have actually been laughing because when we came up with this topic, I was like, oh, okay, let's just do this because I actually had no idea that a lot of people, this is a need for a lot of people. So, but I am so honored to be here tonight, and I'm excited that we are having this conversation, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A, so that we can continue learning. And like Richard has said, my name is Grace Nzula. I'm an HR consultant and trainer with Atara Solutions. Atara Solutions is a HR consulting and training firm, and we are located here in Nairobi with partners all over the country. And we take on your HR departments. We actually have three offerings. We do HR consulting, where we take on a HR project. We also do HR outsourced, HR manager outsourced, where if you do not have a full-time HR person or your business does not require a full-time HR person, you outsource the HR function to us. And then we also do into learning and development, which is part of what you're listening to tonight, which is Get It Right with the Tara Solutions, where we seek to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. Of course, I'm very grateful to have Richard and Catherine Sidandi, and of course the team with at Atara Solutions who make this happen every day. So allow us to jump right on. But before we start, I want us to take a poll, and I just want us to take part in this poll. Please tell me, do you have an HR department in your organization? Yes or no? You can choose whichever. Please take the poll. And then which one represents you? Are you an employer, employee, or are you self-employed? We can take that poll quickly. This will help in figuring out what to do with the information we are sharing. All right. So do you have an existing HR department? And then are you an employer, employee, or self-employed? Okay. All right. All right, all right, all right. We are about to get to a good percentage um, of the people represented here. This will help in crafting. Right, and all right. So we are, all right, I think we're good. So 66% employees, some people have departments, some people don't. All right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for participating. I think in the interest of time, we can move to the next part. All right, so tonight we want to look at how to establish a HR department. And we want to start off by just 1 second. All right, so tonight we're looking at establishing the HR department. And I want us, before we go to the details of what to do, I want us to look at, what is this one? Okay. All right, so who is HR? HR is an official psychologist, event planner, peacemaker, lawyer, and teacher. And I will expound on why this is the right definition of who an HR is, because in all honesty, HR is quite involving, quite engaging. I know somebody I was talking to the other day who was like, so what do you guys exactly do? Because I don't think in our organization we have major HR issues. And then you realize, oh my God, oh my God. Do you have a psychologist, an event planner, a peacemaker, a lawyer, and a teacher all in one person in your institution? So that is my definition of HR. Right. So I want us to also look at the employee life cycle. So when an employee comes into the business, the first before they come in, you need to attract them. So it's the job of the employer to make sure that they have a culture that can attract an employee. They have an offering that can attract an employee. And this goes into even the jobs that you see advertised and just the beginning of the recruitment process. And then you move on to recruitment, where you attend interviews, you go through the series of whatever it is that needs to be done before you join the institution. Then we move to onboarding, where you come in, you are inducted into the business, you're told this is the expectations from your role or not. Because if you do not have an HR department, then of course onboarding is done by people who are not experts. So probably you'll be put together with the CEO or the head of department. So an employee goes through onboarding, and then there's the retention. Retention is where the efforts to make sure that this employee does not leave, and especially before their probation period is over. And then the employee then goes through the development. This is where we have things like performance management. This is where we have things like training and personal development, career advancement, promotions, and all that. That is on development. And then separate. This is now where the employer and employee can separate. Now, the separation probably shouldn't go into details because today we're not looking at that. So there are different ways where an employee can separate from an employer, including death, including termination, including retirement, including summary dismissal, including redundancies, among others. So this is the cycle that an employee goes through in an organization. So if you're running an institution, you need to check where your people at. And if you're an employee, where exactly are you at on this employee life cycle? My friend Nelson Aguda is currently on onboarding today because he put up his post on LinkedIn. So today Nelson has been onboarded to his new place of work. Where are you in terms of if you're an employee, where are you? If you're an employer, where are most of your employees? Now, employers who have very high turnovers, you're always stuck at recruit and onboard. But with employers who have a way to sustain their employees and retain and engage and grow their staff, then they get to go through the whole cycle. So sometimes you'll find employers who attract, recruit, onboard, separate. Sometimes you'll find attract, recruit, onboard, retain, separate, and then other times now they go through the whole cycle. So this is technically what an employee goes through in an employer's premises or with your title as an employee. Now, HR has two roles. HR has two roles. The first role of an HR is HR operations. Now, what is involved in HR operations? You have the administration side of things. You have, which is where a lot of people are stuck at, by the way. You have compliance, where this is where to make sure that you're complying with the laws of the land and also you're complying with your policies. And then there's recruitment, where you are looking for employees every now and then. And then there's onboarding, the onboarding process. Then there's employee relations, which includes conflict management, which includes making sure that employees are happy, measuring happiness index and all that. And then there's offboarding, which is what we talked about as separation. So this is what somebody who is in HR operations does. HR operations is mostly done every day. These are the everyday things that are done in HR. And what is the goal? The goal is to build a sustainable organization. Without carrying out the HR operations, you're running a risk of running an unsustainable business. And then there's working and improving on employee relations, because people tend to be happier. People tend to be more engaged. People tend to want to come to work. And then implementing and maintaining HR best practices. People are always asking, is that law or is that best practice? If you're not an HR professional, there are things that we do because it's humanly, we apply the H in HR, and that is what we call best practice. It's not your, which word do I use? It's not what you do because it's an obligation. It is what you do because it is human. It will make the workplace a better place. So it's not enshrined in any law. You probably even put your best practices in your policies. So these are the operational roles of HR. Now, I've seen a lot of people probably on this call are HR professionals. You need to take an audit on yourself and see, are you stuck at HR operations? And what else can you do amongst this? Because most people actually do this as an everyday cycle in HR. Now, there's also the strategic role of HR. We have HR operations, which pretty much, if you're an HR, you should be able to start getting comfortable with. Don't just get stuck with administrative issues. Then strategic roles of HR is aligning human resource with the organization goals. A lot of people have been asking, how do I link our department's goal to the institution goals? Now, that is the role of you as if you're a strategic HR. So if you're a HR consultant and you're going into an institution for the first time, you need to also ask, as you do your audit, as you ask for HR policies, the first document that you need to ask for is the strategic, the business strategy. Where is this organization? What are the objectives this organization has put in place? And then you look into the document and see what is the role of HR into achieving this business strategy or these objectives. Now, the next role is adapting to changing market conditions. That is the other role of strategic HR. You look at what is happening in the market. You look at your business and you keep adjusting and just advising that this is what the market is saying. This is where we are in terms of people, and this is how we can bridge the gap. So, for example, we are in the age of technology. So what is the market saying about technology, and how can HR now adopt technology to make sure that we are achieving our organization goals? And then there's maintaining a competitive edge. Now, the main reason that you have, we call it human resource. The reason why you have people in your organization is because your people are your competitive advantage. So you need to make sure that your people are staying fresh, they're staying updated, they're staying informed, they're staying excited to come to work, and they're really pushing to achieve the organization goals. Now, what are the actual things that you need to do when you're playing the role of a strategic HR? Now, the first thing you need
Grace, we have lost you.
Yeah?
Sorry, we had missed you for a bit. Okay.
I'm back now?
Well, yes.
Okay. So I was talking about employee value proposition. What exactly? So you need to stop just reporting about the warning letters. What exactly do they translate with when it comes to business? When we talk about organizations that are people-centric, what exactly are we meaning? What exactly are these people bringing on board? And then you start thinking about workforce planning in a strategic way. I've talked about looking at your business strategy, or even sitting when people are developing the business strategy. By the way, you need to be part of that conversation, because you need to be playing at the decision-making space. So you need to be part of developing the the business strategy, so that then you're there to advise on workforce planning. How many employees do we need in year one of our business strategy? How many employees do we need on year two? What are the kind of skills that they will need, right? Then from there, you move to recruitment and selection. Are you getting the right person for the right job? By the way, let me tell you the truth. The hardest people to recruit in this town are HR professionals. I don't know whether any other consultant has experienced that, but it is so hard to get a competent HR professional who is actually willing to do the work. I think this is a challenge to most HRs, that we need to really own our jobs, and we need to be able to communicate what we are talking about. Because we've done quite a number of interviews, and sometimes you really get disappointed. Now, the other thing from playing as a strategic role is training. Now, I'm saying this because before you establish a HR department, you need to understand what role this department will be playing, right? So I was at training, and this is learning and development. What are the training needs that you've identified? Whatever issues you have, can they be solved by training? Would you need to upgrade people? Would you need to upskill people? Do you need to unlearn and relearn? Do you need to get people to understand the systems better? Do you need to probably move the organization to become an ISO certified? What exactly do you need? What are your training needs? You are promoted internally. Are you training these people on how or the skills that they need to become leaders and move from operational part of things? So, and for us HR professionals, the first thing that we need to challenge ourselves is to move from just the operations and also combine it with strategic thinking. This will help you to quit firefighting, because now when you become a strategic HR, you start responding and not reacting to issues. And then performance management. Do you have a performance management system at work? And by the way, performance management does not have to scare you. It doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be, these are the results I want. Make sure that your objectives are very specific, they're very smart, so that then you can be able to measure whatever it is that you set as your KPIs. Now, if you have a small organization, you don't have to be worried about the balance scorecard or whatever other performance management system that is used. You need to just come up with you can customize for yourself, right? Then gather 360-degree feedback. What are our customers saying? What are our people internally saying? What is the management saying? 360-degree feedback. Then total rewards. How are you awarding good performance? How are you rewarding people, right? What are the things that you're doing to motivate and keep your staff engaged? And then succession planning. For example, you have Grace Nzula. Grace Nzula has this fantastic talent. A friend of mine the other day was being told, please do not resign. We need you. He asked for a promotion and was not given. So when he resigns a month, and he gave them 2 months notice, then he resigns, and then he's told, now that promotion he wanted is here now, because they cannot find somebody with this talent. But the HR has been seated in that organization for the last 1 year, not having an understudy for this person. So succession planning is very important. And we talked about succession planning with my friend Ajal. I think you can check our YouTube channel. There's a webinar we did on talent pipeline and talent management. That answers your question on succession planning. And then we have retention management. The cost of recruitment, the cost of turnover, oh my God. And I want you to think it as very simply as possible. For the mothers in this house, if your house girl says they're leaving every other day, your biggest trouble is, my God, I can't believe I'm training again. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of you. So retention management, what are you doing to keep your staff, especially the good ones, right? The people who are actually part of your, who have bought into the vision, the people who are driven, the people who believe in whatever it is that the organization is trying to do. And then from a strategic HR, you need to be able to do HR audits. And these audits, you need to do them as often as you possibly can. Probably twice a year if you can, or depending on what level you are. If you're going through a change process, HR audits are part of the process, because you need to make sure that you are staying updated, you're staying at par. People, processes, and performance are going together, right? So you need to make sure that your audits tell you something. Your HR audits are answering to something, right? So once you understand the role of HR from an operational point to now a strategic role, then it becomes easier for you to actually establish an HR department, right? So what are the risks of not having an HR department? First thing is legal compliance risks. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it's the same for Uganda and Tanzania and Rwanda, because I know they are well represented here, or Nigeria, or any other part of the world. I don't know whether your people are as litigant as Kenyans. And it does not help that we actually have ambulance chasers as lawyers. Those people, you don't even need to pay them to open a file, or maybe you just pay 6,000 to open a file. Then whatever it is that you win is what they bring. And then unfortunately, because you do not have an HR, you don't follow some due process. And unfortunately, the law keeps changing. Every time a judge makes a ruling, I know the Ugandans are having a conference on legal and labor laws and legal matters in this, I think, next month. And one of the reasons why they are pushing for that is because the judges keep making decisions, and then it is contrary to, or a buildup of what is in the act. And then sometimes they get confused. So for legal compliance, it's very important that you establish a HR department that keeps tabs and gets updated on what is changing in the legal front, so that then the company has compliance. And then employee turnover and recruitment costs. My friend, if you think that you can just hire and fire anytime, you need to do your math. You need to do your math of the time it takes to hire an employee, the time it takes to train them, and the time it takes for them to leave, or for you to replace them. And then figure out that cost, and and cost it not financially only, also cost it in terms of time, and you will realize the need for having an HR department. And then performance management. Who is going to follow up? Somebody told me the other day, my organization has no HR. We have hired an admin to keep tabs of their sales performance. But I'm like, performance management is not just about keeping up with targets. Performance management is bigger than just, have you achieved your target? No, I have not. Kwaheri ya kuonana, or see you another time. Performance management is so inclusive, it's so huge that you need to actually have somebody keeping tab. And we're now moving to performance appraisals. We are having check-ins. We are having assessments. We are having performance coaching. We are having, oh my God, performance management is so huge. But do you really, as an employer, do you have the time to keep up with performance management? Then you have business growth challenges. You start a business, there's two of you. Then you start growing your business, your portfolio grows. You need somebody to keep tab of your, you need to increase your employees. Then the more your employees come, the more the needs for having established systems, and then takes you back to legal compliance as well. Then there's employee relations, where there are people. Imagine you as brothers and sisters, you who are born from the same parents, actually fight. Can you imagine what happens in the workplaces with people who have met when they were how many years old, right? So for conflict management, for happiness index, for making sure there is peace and harmony and everything good that is happening in the organization, then you need to make sure that you have employee relations. Otherwise, you run a risk of people beating each other. You run a risk of people just stealing from you. You run a risk of people just misbehaving in the workplaces, right? And then culture. It is said that culture is strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So without a proper HR department, then you end up having a culture that is not supporting the growth of the business. Those are some of the risks. I'm sure you can add some more, probably on the chat. Please tell us, what are the other risks of not having an HR department? You can engage on the chat. What are the other risks? I've talked about compliance. I've talked about the cost of turnover and recruitment. Talked about performance management. I've talked about business growth. I've talked about employee relations, culture. What else can you come up with? Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. I am glad to hear that it applies to Uganda as well. Richard, your message has just been sent to host and panelists. Yes, tell me, what are the other, or have talent management, employee wellness, employee benefits and relations? Absolutely. Those are some of the other risks that you run if you do not have a HR department. All right. So why do you then need an HR department, or what is the importance? The first thing is effective workforce management. You need to hire people, but you need to hire people to do a job. And that job needs to be very clear. The instructions have to be very, very clear. Expectations have to be defined. If you have been in a relationship, you know how much expectations can kill a relationship, right? And this applies even in the workplace. If an employer has expectations that are not clearly communicated to the employee, it means they cannot work effectively, right? And then compliance with employment law. As I've talked about compliance, I think, at length, and especially during separation, the due process. Do you know so many people have been awarded in our courts because, fine, the guy stole from you. We have no issues with that. The guy stole from you. However, you did not follow due process. Yeah. So you need to make sure that your due process is followed. Now, as an employer, do you even have the time? Do you even know, first of all, do you even know what due process is? Yeah. Then employee development and engagement. People have talked about employee wellness. We are living in the age where mental illnesses are on a high. What are you doing to support your employees? And by the way, you can't fire everyone with a mental health problem. So you need to make sure that you have wellness programs that support people's mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. So you need to have an HR department that looks into employee engagement, employee development. What do they need to do? We have this talent. If we polished it a bit, we normally call it panel beating. If you just have Richard here, you can panel beat him and he can give you excellent results. So what are these things that you need to do to develop this employee? And conflict resolution and employee relations. By the way, you can separate with an employee and no one, everyone goes home happy. It does not have to be conflict. There are some employers, when you resign, they think that you're rejecting them. Then it becomes such a huge problem. There are also employees who, when you fire them, it becomes such a huge problem, So conflict resolution and employee relations is part of what HR does. It's part of what you will benefit. And then strategic planning and organization development. We've talked about linking the people to their strategic organization goals, right? Then you need to make sure that your organization is now moving, you're growing, right? And then cost savings. We've talked about cost of hiring. I'm telling you, sometimes you think people are a cost. And sometimes in HR, people think that, oh my God, you're asking me to spend too much on my employees. I tell you, if you spend on employees, you have to spend money to make money. Make sure those employees are happy. Your clients will be happier. You'll get to retain clients. You'll also open new businesses. And that is how you actually end up having branches all over Africa and internationally, because you have invested in your HR, and then the HR has invested in your people, right? And then brand reputation. Nowadays, it's just brand. If you have seen what lengths people are going for brands, it's real. And HR helps you. Do you know, imagine all your employees are your brand representatives. So if you have happy employees, if you have employees who are actually doing their job as they were supposed to, then you're likely to have a very good brand, because everyone becomes a brand ambassador. Are we still together? Can I hear a yes on the chat? Who believes with me? Human resource is someone who solves problems you did not know existed in ways you cannot understand. The HR is in the house. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Or even the business people in the room. What do you think? Right?
Jacinta, yes. Prudence, yes. Nicholas, yes. Jared, yes. Paul, Ngugi, yes. Benson, yes. Judith, yes. Yes are the predominant responses.
Yes. So, sometimes you go into places, especially some small organizations, and then they're like, so exactly what does HR do? And so normally I just say, my friend, sometimes you solve problems for you that you had no idea they existed. And like sometimes you want to choose to not look at those problems, but they're gonna come back and hurt you in the future. So HR is key to your organization. Right. So then we move to the HR department or function. Steve Jobs said, the secret of my success is that we have gone to exemptional lengths to hire the best people in the world. Now imagine if Steve Jobs was keen on people. If Steve Jobs put emphasis on people. You are running an organization and you want to manage the business, you want to manage decision making, you want to manage projects, and then you still want to manage the people in your organization, my friend. We can start contributing, because your alphas are going to come, your high blood pressure is going to come. And dealing with people is a full-time job, I can tell you that. Dealing with people is a lot of work. All right. So if you do not have a HR department, it's time. Now, for those who are on this call and want to establish a HR department, here are the processes. The first thing that you need to do is establish the organization needs or explore the current state. Now, this is what I tell my clients when we are going to pitch for HR manager outsource. You have run a business for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years even, because we have a client who had run a business for 20 years without HR. So you have run a business for this long. Surely you are doing something right. So let us establish what you have already, and then we can start building up from there. So the first thing you need to do, if the organization has been running for some time, you need to explore the current state. Look at what has been happening. If they have employees, do they have contracts? If they have employees, how are they engaged? Do they have a code of conduct? How have people been operating in this institution? What is the culture like, right? So if it's an existing institution, you need to explore what is there now, right? And then if it's a new company, then you need to establish the HR needs. Somebody will share with you their vision, then you can support them in establishing the needs in the HR department. Now, from there, you need to organize employee records and develop a record system. We talked about HR administration. Yeah, you need to look at documentation. You need to make sure that there are some basic things that an employee file needs to have. And please remember, we are in the era of data protection. So remember to get consent from employees when you're asking for their documents. First thing you need to have is the contract for the employee. What are the terms of engagement? What is the agreement between the employer and the employee? Now, your agreement, remember, has to be anchored in the law, right? There are some people who say, but we agreed to do this, and that is something that is not, that is illegal. So you must, the Employment Act gives you the bare minimum in your contract. So you get your contract done, you get your what do we call it? ID cards and all those things that form an employee file. If you are allowed, you can also collect the next of kin because it's very necessary. In Kenya, for statutories, you need a national ID, you need a PIN number, you need an SSF, you need NHIF, and I think it's the same for Uganda and Tanzania as well, and I think Rwanda as well. So you need to organize the staff records. So there's something we call a file audit. Sometimes the employer has files, but like we have witnessed in many organizations when you go to do a HR audit, when you're doing the file audit, you realize that one file for Richard was in one drawer that had his CV and one certificate. And then probably this is a nurse who requires the nursing council license. It probably is an HR as well who requires their practicing license. It is nowhere in the file, right? So you need to make sure that the mandatory documentation for an employee to have are actually contained in that file. And by the file, I don't only mean that you need to have physical files. You can have physical files if you want to, or if you have a HR system, you can expand it to have records keeping where you can upload and scan and upload some of these documents. If the files are a shell, make sure you build up on them because that is your basis to start off operating and managing employees. And then review existing technology and consider needs. Most of the companies that you'll find, they actually have a payroll system. That is the first thing because QuickBooks, when accountants are doing their math, they incorporated a payroll system, but some of them don't have, some of them are using Excel, which is well and good. Check. How are people being paid? How are people's needs being processed? How are we keeping records of leave? You know, for example, if your leave entitlement is 21 days, who is tracking these leave days? If you have a union, what is the agreement between the union and the company? So you need to that was supposed to come in the record. So check what is the documentation in that institution. Check the technology. What are they using for whatever it is that they need to process on matters employees, and then update HR policies and procedures. If they don't have one, develop. If they have one, you can call in consultants to help you update, or you can attend trainings. By the way, the one thing that you need to do is, as an employer or an employee or somebody who is heading in charge of HR, you need to make sure that you invest in personal development. I have seen, in fact, immediately we sent out this flyer, the questions I was getting in my inbox is, so are you going to cover the people who are always asking for templates? Well, if you get templates, it's well and good. If not, attend training, come up, learn how to develop policies, come up with your own way of doing it. Just make sure that your policies are anchored in the law. And then procedures. When this happens, this is how we handle it. When this happens, this is how we handle it. When this happens, this is how we handle it. Right? So you need to update or develop your policies and procedures. Then from there, you need to check compliance and legal requirements. So for example, as you do your file audit, how many people had warning letters? How many people had more than 2 or more than 3, right? And then when they're separating, do they follow due process? Do people pay statutories? You know, we've gone into organizations where they don't pay an SSF. And sometimes as consultants, we are called to manage a discipline issue. And then you realize you have to separate with this employee, but it's going to be so expensive to the organization because they have not been paying an SSF. So check for compliance, statutories, compliance with the Employment Act, compliance with WIBA, Work Injury Benefits Act, compliance with the health, what do we call it? Health and safety. Check for compliance. We have 5 laws in Kenya. Check which one is applying for this, for which institution. The companies without unions, they don't need the Labor Relations Act. So that's fine. And then staff gaps, consider the staff gaps. You have done your audit, you have seen the number of employees, then you have interrogated the organization and the strategy, then you have realized, oops, we may need to hire 1 to 3 people. You need to start doing the recruitment. If there are no recruitment needs, you need to develop standards. How do we recruit in this company, and how do we onboard? I used to work for an organization where we hired salespeople. Our onboarding process used to be 1 year, and it was very clear. We did not expect anything from that employee for a year. And because we used to deal with very, very what's the word? Bespoke items or very unique items. I mean, you're hiring somebody who needs to sell a bed for 1 million shillings. Now, if they need to sell a bed for 1 million shillings, they need to believe that that bed is 1 million shillings. So imagine the time it takes. I'm sure even you're reacting. Grace, what do you mean a bed for 1 million shillings? Yes. There's a door for 2 million shillings, 2.5 million shillings. There's a sofa for 800,000. This is somebody whose sofa was bought at Otis Furniture somewhere. And it was 120. What do you mean I'm supposed to sell a furniture worth a car? So that the onboarding process used to be a whole year because we needed to change the mindset of this employee to be able to bring us results. Now, for you, you need to evaluate, right? What is the onboarding process? This business, this is what we deal in. What is the attitudes of these people? And then do we need to change the mindset, or where do we belong, right? So you establish the staff gap, and then you establish recruitment processes or standards, and then how are you going to onboard? So, and for this one, you can even come up with an onboarding metric, right? And even a checklist of where you check that this person has been taken through 1, 2, 3. Not the whole thing that you guys do. You have hired somebody to tell them, okay, this is the HR policy. They are supposed to read and understand things in 1 day. Then the next day, you want them to understand their contract. Then the next day, they are meeting 1,000,001 people. Then the other day, they are supposed to give you results. How does that work? All right. The next thing that you need to do as you establish a HR department is identify training and develop training needs and develop a plan. Now, I've seen a lot of questions. Probably that's another webinar that we will have on doing training needs analysis and just understanding the L&D front. As you do your HR audit, part of what you also need to identify are the training needs, because that's an easy way to do it, right? Before you even go to, like, as you're looking at your documents, as you're looking at what this organization has been doing, you can actually identify the training needs. And then from there, you can look at, speak to the employees, have one-to-ones with the staff members. They'll tell you what they want improved in the organization. They'll also tell you what they would like to be trained on. So identify the needs and then come up with a plan. And the plan includes a budget. So is this organization able to pay? Can we start this in this quarter? Can we train people in that quarter, right? Can we negotiate with Grace Nzula to come and just train our people for the next 3 quarters on this specific thing because there's a gap in this institution, right? And then develop compliance standards. There are things that I call here with. You need to simplify. These are the expectations. This is the code of conduct. These are the minimums when it comes to compliance. Statutories must be paid, right? Statutories, I mean NSSF, NHIF, housing levy, and whatever, if that is for Kenya, and whatever else that is introduced. For Uganda, it's NSSF, pay, among others, right? Then compensation and benefits. How much are you paying your employees? What are the employees paid? Are they in line with what is required in the market? In Kenya, we actually have minimum wage. So if you're in an organization that pays minimum wage, are people being paid the minimum wage? Yeah. Are you running a risk in terms of compensation and benefits? And then is there anything that they are offered? Pension schemes, are they offered? How are the pension schemes run? Have they outsourced, or are they running with the national social security fund? Where exactly is compensation and benefit? Are even people paid on time? Is part of what you need to establish. And then as you settle in, these are things that you now start changing as you go along. And then employee relations and conflict resolution. Identify how conflict is resolved in that company. If they have no ways that are documented, establish grievance handling procedures, have them documented. Yeah, have it documented on how many warning letters somebody needs to have. We know what the Employment Act provides, but here it is. Some of there are some things that are they can be forgiven. Yeah, what are those things? You know, you define some of these things and then decide how are we going to handle conflict. I like one of the corporates that has whenever they do their performance management evaluations, you actually are given 2 weeks, 14 days to appeal if you're not happy with your result. And then they send you to a different department for your appeal. And then they come and reevaluate. Because sometimes you're done for an evaluation by a manager who does not like you. The HR manager has also been fed negative things about you as an employee, then you have nothing else to say. So they have allowed people to appeal. You can come up with those grievance handling procedures. Then recognize the right time to build an HR team. Now, after you have set up, you've seen you've gone step by step. The first thing you need to establish is the needs of this institution. What are the HR needs here? Or what is currently existing? Then you build up the documentation. Documentation includes contracts, includes job descriptions, includes I have avoided using jargon because I did not want to complicate life. This was supposed to be very easy. If I started talking about job analysis and job evaluations, I'm sure probably I'll lose some people. So because this was supposed to be easy, the beginning of establishing a HR department, maybe when we are covering HR consulting, we shall now go all technical. But because this is the beginning, start with the documentation, complete with policies, set your standards, set your procedures, start implementing. Now, let me warn you a bit. When you start implementing, there are likely to be challenges. There is likely to be resistance because people are not used to what you're doing. I have gone to institutions because this is probably something we do every other day. We work a lot with SMEs who tell us, please, I do not have an HR. Please, we have done this for so long. Please come and handle this. And then you start giving people contracts and people are like, wait a minute. Why should I sign your contract? I have worked here for 13 years and you're here telling me to sign contracts. I've had people who resign because they just can't handle the organization having systems. I've had to fire people because they are refusing to sign contracts. I've had to manage the process because you'll face resistance as you establish a HR, especially in an existing, in an organization that's existing. If you're running a business or if you intend to run a business, please start the right way. Start the right way. Have your HR systems in place. Sometimes most people will come to us when things are very thick. And I'm sure even the HR professionals in the room, you have been called when things are, people are in court. Let's stop with reactions. Let's go responsive way. Let's respond to the needs of our business. Let's not react. All right. So great HR is doing what's good for both the organization and its people. So the people who think that HR is only working for the organization, unfortunately, we work for both organization and its people. And sometimes we will make decisions that are good for business. not good for the people. And by people, I mean including the management. Sometimes we make a decision that is actually right for the business and not for any of the people in it. Okay. All right. So for you to win, if you're here and you're wondering why you need the HR, I think in conclusion, to win in the marketplace, you must win in the workplace. So have a HR department that's running, support the HR department, allow them to do their job, allow them to and to flourish. And if you're an HR and you're stuck somewhere, please look for help. Allow people to help you so that you can also support the business, and then we can all win in the long run. Thank you. Richard, back to you.
Thank you, moderator of choice. I'm telling you, the entire Africa is here. I can see people from Niger. I can see people from Rwanda. I can see people from Tanzania. I can see people from Uganda. The entire Africa has come to listen. How do we start a human resource department? As we wait for people to type their questions, you've said that culture eats strategy. What are some of the cultural impediments that organizations have that will make a HR department not be functional? We know culture can eat every good plans. And what about a HR who wants to establish a HR department? She has everything, or he has everything, but the culture is anti-human resource. What do we do?
What do we do, or what are the things we face?
Yes, what are some of the things we should do so that we can overcome the cultural roadblocks?
Right. I think the first thing that HR needs to learn is communication, right? We need to be able to sell our ideas to the business, and we need to speak the business language. We need to express ourselves. We need to speak business language so that then our HR initiatives are also funded, or budgets are approved. That HR needs to do is to be able to communicate, and by communication, I mean we need to be able to speak business language. We also need to learn emotional intelligence. And then we also need to know that when there's an attack on HR, it's not on you as a person, it's on the job. So don't take it personally. When you're told not to do, relax. Go and repackage whatever it is you are selling to management, and then start go and sell it again. So we need to learn how to communicate. We need to become salespeople. We also need to understand the business. For us to reshape culture, we have to understand the business. We must be able to understand this is what the business speaks, right? And then from this business, you know, I keep seeing that people just want to sit, do contracts, handle employees, do wellness, go for team buildings, and that's it for HR. My friend, you need to be able to go into the boardroom and say, these are the things that we need to do. And this is the benefits they will have into the business. And this is where things like your mindset in terms of strategic HR and then HR analytics. Don't just go with stories. You know, you remember, Richard, we're having this conversation about HR is your work is to pray and serve tea.
Yes.
and then you're asked a question in the boardroom, and the only thing you can say is sina maoni. For the non-Kenyans here, it's to say, or rather the non-Swahili speakers, it's to say, I don't have an opinion. You know, you need to be able to have an opinion. You need to be able to share your thoughts. You need to be able to have analyzed what is happening here. So for us to reshape culture, we need to, first of all, change our mindset, understand the business, learn how to communicate, exercise emotional intelligence, understand that when you're told no, it's not a no to you. It is probably a no to business, and you need to go and reevaluate and come and sell the idea. You also need to see, what can I prioritize? This business runs like this. If I prioritize, for example, a company that has never done training, how do you package this training idea for them? A company that does not have performance management, how do you ensure that people can buy into the performance management initiatives? Those are some of the things that you can do. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, moderator of choice. We have Safura, I think it's from either Rwanda or Uganda. She's asking, how do you lead up where all decisions are made up by the ED no suggestions are taken on. You give very beautiful suggestions, you research, you consult, you write a good paper to the ED or whoever is in charge of the organization, and those suggestions are thrown into the dustbin or they are put on the shelf. What do you do?
Now, if the HR, we need to speak the language of the employer. I don't know whether you get what I mean. Let me tell you something. My former boss, we used to know, if you go to him between the 26th and 31st, I think I've told this story before. If you go to him between 26th and 31st of the month, all your initiatives will be said no. But if you go these other days and you go at around 11, and then it had to be written down, you needed to write, this is what I want, this is what the input I require. Then you take initiative. Don't wait for them to come to you and ask, what do you think we should do? Then you give your ideas, then they go and do the opposite way. Take initiative, go and sell. Don't take it personally when they don't agree with you. Don't take it personally. Just study their mode of communication. Study the language they speak, and then start speaking their language. I think one of the major things that HR need to do is when you go into an organization, don't go with a mindset. You know, that like from where I came from, this is what we used to do. Or from the other company, this is what we used to do. So this must happen in this institution. My friend, it does not work like that. You have to be flexible. So you need to always look out for opportunities. When you have a business mindset, you will always see opportunities. You need to look out for those opportunities, then sell your ideas at that opportune time. Sometimes you see people starting a business and failing. Sometimes it's not because there was no opportunity. It is maybe the way they were packaged, or it was just not the right time for that product to hit the market. So you need to learn the language of your employer and then start speaking their language. Sell your ideas in their language. I hope I'm being clear. Sell your ideas in their language. You know, I happen to work in multi sectors. And sometimes when I'm speaking to individual business owners, the language that I speak and the way I speak to a board are two different things. But bottom line is you have to learn to speak the business language. Your initiatives, what are the advantages? And then don't just go and say, excuse me, I just thought we should do this and this. For why? How will we benefit? In fact, you don't even start, we should do this and this and this. Say, by the way, I've noticed there's this issue here, and the business may suffer a loss of this and this. Sometimes the only thing you need to show your employers is the loss they are going to make. And then you can segment intent. You don't go with all your suggestions at once. Pick the most important, prioritize, you know, and then start speaking their language. So don't go into that organization and just want to implement things. Grace said, you do this, we do this, we do this. You know what needs to be done. Then the process of doing is now what you break into small segments, you know, as you implement. I sometimes face a lot of resistance, even from employers. Well, like, Grace, I do not understand. This is not what we signed up for. During transition, sometimes the business slows down because people may not perform as expected. But you need to make sure that the management believes that this is just an issue now, and they have buy-in. And sometimes when the employers completely don't support you, then you need to go to organizations that support you. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you very much. Let me read a few of the comments. We have my good friend Paul Ngugi saying HR is not a department. It is something that has to be in the entire organization. We have, who else has said something? Lois Karaoke, very true, Grace, that is in appreciating what you have just done. We have Jared Njoguna is saying HR is the biggest role in the organizational intelligence. Alex, personal information which is kept confidential, the same as Uganda, that is in terms of comparison. We have a question from MC to everyone. What if an employee comes and stays for just a year and leaves? There is a joke, by the way, that in terms of training, what if we train them and they leave? What if we don't train them and they stay. You remember that joke in learning and development? It's almost related. Then I have my good friend Josh saying that he was onboarded for 3 months. Then we have Nigeria, we're well represented. Yes, our brothers from Nigeria, yes, you are very well represented. We have, who else? Faith Miracle, Uganda, thank you very much. He has learned a lot from the insights that you have given. We have Damaris Ndungwa, culture eats strategy for breakfast, operational excellence for lunch, and everything else for dinner. We have Catherine Kinita saying, good presentation. Thank you very much for putting that together. Grace. Grace, now as we continue enjoying this and also we have limited with time, what are some of the pitfalls that HRs make themselves? The commonest as a consultant, what are some of the pitfalls that HR themselves cause and they create a problem to establishing a human resource department?
What are some of the pitfalls HR makes? The first thing is not understanding the business. The second thing is not understanding your role. Why were you hired in the first place? I've seen somebody saying it is the first time that the employer is recruiting an HR officer. That's okay. It is an opportunity for you. In fact, if you're a first-time HR, I love being the first-time HR because I get to set standards. Whoever comes after me just builds up on what I set up. So it's an amazing opportunity because it's your standards. And then if your organization, if you're in an organization that is a bit toxic or very fast-paced, what is the language that you get to speak? So HR fails to learn the business, fails to understand the role, fails to speak the language. I mean, when you're dealing with your employer, you really need to know how they communicate. You really need to understand at what point do you bring up which conversation. You can't go on 28th is when you're starting a conversation on increments and promotions. When these guys are busy wondering whether they are paying you for free. Because a lot of non-corporate businesses, they will think that they are paying you for free towards the end of the month. So that's not the time to go and ask for promotion. I've seen somebody asking about what do you do in an organization where staff leave because there are no promotions. You need to find a way to communicate that. You need to bring numbers. You need to have your HR analytics. This is the turnover rate. In the last 3 months, we have lost this number of employees. Results given, you need to start doing exit interviews, document why people are leaving, then show evidence that this is why people are leaving. I'm not saying that they will agree with you immediately, but you have planted a seed. And then eventually, and you keep pushing for it. You keep reminding them that this is the danger that you are facing. Compile a whatever risk and send to your employer. You know, share with them even trainings that are happening about employee engagement and just retention. You know, sometimes it's because they are not informed. Sometimes it's because they don't care. They look like they don't care, but they actually care. So you need to package your business. So part of the pitfalls that HR have is we really don't know how to speak business language. We really don't understand our role. And then we are almost stuck in Serikali's idea. Or please, management, come and help me. My friend, I have fought in boardrooms. I have fought with management. I'm like, no, we cannot do that. And I will stand my ground. And I have also been fired. I have been suspended. Get out. You're not listening to me. But I have tried to sell my idea, and sometimes people don't listen. I've been told to go, and then I'm called back after 2 hours. I'm like, okay, fine. What did you say? So, and I remember there's a time my former employer would say, get out. I want that letter and I want it to brought to my desk. And when I know it's a bad letter, I would go and do the letter nicely, and then I would put their name to sign. Then I will take it when they are cool, like 2 hours later, when they are calm and collected. Then because I am not signing the letter, they say I've put the responsibility to them. They'll start thinking otherwise and then coming back. So sometimes you need to know when to fight your battles. Sometimes you need to know when to not. You know, just let things slide and then you'll go and deal with them. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you. We have Warusimbi Samimi. She's saying, excellent presentation, Grace. The entire continent is here. Great moderation, Richard. Then we have Very insightful from Millicent Ojuang. We have Samuel Kandia saying excellent and on point. We have Namanya, great presentation, so much to take home. Thank you so much, Grace. Damaris, effectively communicating the value proposition where it matters. Jane, I like the idea of repackaging the idea and forward it again. Then sensitization for employee is key. The other question I want to ask Grace as we come to the end of our conversation, because even good things must come to an end. Once you have established the human resource department, how do you make sure that things are moving? I have in mind briefly mention about HR audits so that you're sure that you're moving in a good direction, not a question of just ticking boxes.
So in any project, monitoring and evaluation is key. So as you start on a project, you need to define what is it that you want to achieve. I've seen somebody asking, how do you implement policies in an organization? There are no contracts, letters, leave days, and it has been in existence for so long. Now, the first thing you need to do is come up with the contracts yourself. Involve a lawyer to advise, because I don't know from which country you're asking from. Involve a lawyer, let them advise you which dates you can date the letters. And then if you need to control to backdate the date, then you need to come up with that. And then from there, if it's leave, they have never gone for leave. Leave is a right. We are not compromising on leave. So if people for 7 years have not gone on leave, my friends, that's a liability. You need to compute the number of leave days pending. Have you seen what, like in Kenya government, there are people who had 170 leave days. They have not taken leave in like forever. So you need to compute the number of leave days pending, and then you need to speak to your employer and say, these are the leave days that are leave liability. This is how much it would cost the organization. Then you can come up with ideas. Do you want to pay off some days and some people can take some days? Are you able to do that? Do you want to have a structure where you can work on those leave days that have been pending for 7 years? Have people taken? What is the structure? You need to check that in between. Now, HR audit, you need to know how to ask the right questions. Yeah. When you're doing a HR audit, besides the documentation audit, you need to do a people audit. You need to interact with people, have one-to-ones. Let people fill in a questionnaire. You have written the right questions. Have one-to-one and discuss those questions and other things that may come up. And then the employees will be very open and they will be able to give you information. Then you can use that information without mentioning names. You can use that information and structure now your HR plan for the upcoming days. And then you monitor, because you remember you have objectives. So you monitor, you say, okay, we were supposed to do this on the first month. Where are we? We were supposed to do this on the second month. Where are we? You know, what are the boxes that we've been able to tick so far? Those are some of the things that you do when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, and also part of your HR audit. You need to audit, where are we? And by the way, next time I think we shall talk about KPIs for HR. How do you know that you're doing your job right? Yeah.
Thank you, moderator of choice, Grace Nzula. That has been a wonderful, wonderful, refreshing, and even entertaining presentation for the entire Africa, which is here tonight. Let me read to you the people who have met this particular evening, an excellent one. We have Pathways Solution Services. They deal with online learning management systems. We have Panessa Training Institute, the bed that you have had, which costs $1 million and $2 million. They are the ones who make that bed. Work hard and get money and buy a bed for $1 million. Then we have Steadfast Quality Solutions. Then we have Profiles International for psychometric tests, emotional intelligence. Then we have, which one else? I think some have disappeared. Then, of course, we have Atara Solutions. You are outsourcing HR organization, consultants, trainers, and so many things that are related to HR. We have also Kapla Mentito. We have the ones that we mentioned from the onset. Grace, I want you to prepare for your parting shots as we wait for Jacinta to share with us the platform that really links people together so that we can be able to share professional nuggets and the business language that you have told us. What is your parting shot? What do you want us to remember from this because we forget very fast. What don't you want us to forget?
Okay. What don't I want us to forget? We need to learn to speak. Okay, we need to understand our role, and we need to move from just operations into strategic thinking. We also need to learn to speak business language. I've seen somebody asking, how do I speak business language in retail? First of all, you need to go to that retail. You need to understand what is it that they sell. If it's a group of companies, take your time. Take your time. There's no rush to understand today. Just take your time. You can decide these are my priorities in terms of action points, but as I do these action points, this is also what I'm learning. Because for you to even measure performance of employees, you need to understand what the business is about. You cannot be a blind person leading another blind person and only relying on the line managers. You need to learn the business. Take your time. You don't have to rush it. Take your time. I've seen somebody asking, how do HR is anchored, is being seen as a finance function. Sometimes you need to, this is the business language I'm talking about. Finance speaks money. HR needs to speak money. You need to speak people linked to money or money linked to people. Let me say it plain language before I start speaking HR jargon in the boardroom. But yeah, and of course, we are open for consultation. Give us business in your institutions. We can come and support you in whatever project that you need, including advisory on your contracting and your policies. And of course, we will be happy to also support you as individuals. I am a certified coach, so I coach people. You can come with your issues at a very discounted rate for that matter. And then, yeah, we move forward. And I really appreciate that you came in today. Thank you.
I can also add that Coach Grace is also a certified mediation expert. She has so many hats to herself. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow HR practitioners and business people have come to learn. This is Richard J. Magoma, MC Positive Flavors, saying thank you very much. You are the ones who have made this particular conversation beautiful, engaging, enlightening, elevated. Do not forget to make HR shine every moment. Go beyond prayers, go beyond writing minutes, become strategic, become a person who adds value. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. See you next week, same time with a different topic. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. There are so many questions. Well, I wish we had more time. But yeah, you can always reach out to us. You can always reach out to us for more information.
Right. Organize an entire
day. The recording will be shared. And you can join our WhatsApp group. Jacinta has shared to know what else is coming up on Atara Solutions.
Well done, Catherine. Well done, Catherine.